do for you? What can the king of Israel, what could the king do for you? Anything. He could protect you. He could bring you in, and he has all of these troops to protect you, right? He can pardon you from your crimes. He can do all of those things. But then it says, will abide in the shadow of the warrior God, of the God who is powerful, is a warrior. I will say of the Lord is the word Elohim, and this is the first name. I'm sorry, that's not even true. There it is. Okay. And we're back. So the Lord is the personal name for God. I was close. I got started, then I skipped to the next paragraph. Personal name for God. That name right there is Yeshua. We sang about Yeshua this morning. Yeshua, we don't even really know, or Yahweh. Yahweh in Old Testament, Yeshua in the New Testament. Yahweh, we don't even really know how to pronounce it. So this was such a sacred name between the Jews and their God. This was the personal nature of God. Okay? Yahweh, all we know is that there's the letters YHWH, and we assume that it's pronounced Yahweh. And this was the God who wants to have a relationship with you. Okay? So this is the one, sometimes we translate it as Jehovah. In the Bible, oftentimes what you'll see is this is the Lord with all capital letters. When it's L-O-R-D and all capitalized throughout the Bible, that word was Yahweh, the personal, the one who wants to have a relationship with you. Okay? And then the fourth name, which is my God in whom I trust, the fourth name is Elohim. And this is the only name for God that is plural. So remember, we believe Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit are three separate yet one. When in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, when it says, when God created the heavens and the earth, that was the first time the word Elohim was used as plural.
Same picture.
So what we get from that passage is that we have the King above all kings who will elevate us to a place of protection, but then will stand guard over us. While he's standing guard over us, he will want to develop a relationship with us. And that he is our comforter and our protector. Right? He has multiple facets of his personality.
Yeah.
And I just love that the idea that in those two verses that we've heard a million times, it was my great-grandma's favorite passage, was Psalm 91. And I shared last week that we would, and Mandy can attest to this, when we would go to her house, if we were sad, she would read a Psalm 91. If we were mad, she would read a Psalm 91. If we were happy, she would read a Psalm 91. If we were hungry, she would read a Psalm 91. I mean, it covered everything for my great-grandma. And it's interesting, something that I've heard over and over for my whole life, but I had never seen before, was that God was described in 4 different ways to meet our every need. Some of the overarching themes of verse 1 and 2, the whole idea of dwelling and abiding is that we take it as a point of theology. The dwelling, abiding, the idea that we are, it's a good idea. Does that make sense? It's a good thing to say. But really what the point here is that many people, myself included, stop short of an encounter with God because we're just satisfied with good theology. This was meant to be a lifestyle. That we were to dwell, that we were to abide within the shadow of the Almighty. Sometimes we interpret our situation by what we see. And I shared a video on Facebook during the quarantine of Jeremy Riddle, and I would encourage you to go back and look at it. I'll try to remember to reshare it today so it's towards the top. But he talks about, Jeremy Riddle's a worship leader, first at Vineyard, then at Bethel, and now he's back with Vineyard. He talks about, in 2018, he did an interview, and he said, we live in two separate realities. And we believe that, right? We believe there's a spiritual realm and a physical realm. And what we have to be able to do is, while we live in the spiritual realm, it doesn't mean we deny what's happening around us. But we embrace the fact that if we dwell in the shelter of the Almighty, He'll protect us. He'll keep us safe. He'll provide for us. And living in those two realities. So I really look at that video. So interestingly enough, though, in verse 2, it says at the beginning, I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. This is the only proactive statement in the entire chapter. The rest of the chapter is, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. And then we skip down, for He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler. He will deliver you, right? He will cover you with His pinions or His feathers. You will not fear the terror of the night or the arrows that fly by day, because He's with you. But this is the only one that says, I will say. But it doesn't say, I will say to the Lord. It says, I will say of the Lord. This is a testimony. This is what we brag on. This is when things get rough. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Not to the Lord. I don't need to say to Him, you are my refuge and He already knows. You confess it. You testify to it. Remember, the word testimony means to do it again. And so we remind ourselves and we remind each other, but He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust.
That's good.
Now, we provide masks in the back, so if anyone wants a mask, you can go back and get one. We have hand sanitizer in the back. We've got soap in the bathroom, just so you know. We've got Lysol that before and after every service, we have to wipe down all of the wooden parts of the pews, door handles, all of those things, microphones, anything that's a high-touch surface. This is the stipulations for us being open. So we got to make sure that we encourage you. So I encourage you to socially distance. Not from me, you guys. You guys are all clumped together as far away from me as you could get, which is really interesting. Except for you guys. My favorites. Right here. And there are people who think that no one here and no one that listens or watches the videos, but there are people who think that us taking those precautions is wrong or untrusting or fearful or something like that. But I heard Bill Johnson say, we don't play with a rattlesnake and call it faith. Right?
That's right.
Common sense makes sense. They haven't seen each other in a long time, except for the last 14 days that they've been quarantined together, so they have a lot to say right now.
I haven't been in this church in 11 months.
So, I love you guys, you know that.
Oh, you did.
But no one else is up front, so who else am I going to make fun of? Common sense. We have to operate in common sense. God gave us a brain, not the spirit of stupid. However, don't let common sense be the hiding place for fear. Does that make sense? So we operate in common sense, but don't let it become the hiding place of fear. Because fear is faith in the wrong kingdom. You've heard me say that a million times. But interestingly enough, I would also tell you that living in fear is the rejection of love. 1 John chapter 4, verse 18 says that there is no fear in love. Right? Perfect love casts out fear. So if we choose to live in fear, then we're rejecting love. We're rejecting the perfect love that Jesus gave us. That being said, and then we're moving on from here, you'll experience fear. It's going to happen. It's okay. We don't live there, we don't set up camp there, but it's okay. Right? God created us with a fight, flight, or freeze mechanism in our brain so that when danger comes, we can do whatever it is we feel like is going to happen to make us live. I can prove that it's okay. Jesus walked on water, right? All the disciples saw him walking on water from the boat, and what were they? They freaked out. It says they were afraid. They thought it was a ghost. It was the only place in the Bible that the Greek word phantasma is used, which is a ghost. And don't ask me why I know that. I like to know random stuff. And Jesus said, I'm not a ghost, you morons. This is the way Jesus talked to his disciples. It really was. He would say things like, how many times do I have to tell you? Right? He would call people blind guides, which is like, stupid. You're so dumb. Like that's the way I picture that Jesus talked, because I like sarcasm. But he said, I'm not a ghost, it's me. And Peter said, well, if it's really you, tell me to come out there. Which I think is interesting and not a lot of forethought from Peter, because a ghost could have said, come out here too. But he's like, Jesus is like, come out here, it's me. He said, okay, well, I will. So he steps out into the water, and he walks on water, which is miraculous. And he's walking towards Jesus, and Jesus is probably about from me to Monty. And he realizes that it's not normal to walk on water. Normally you swim in water. And so he sinks. Why? Because fear overtook him. Jesus was right there, but fear overtook him. And Jesus said, nope, hey, up here, look up here. If you just fix your eyes on me, we're good. So he looked at Jesus. Jesus walked over to him. I could see him like bobbing, like halfway in the water. He's not completely sunk yet because he's watching Jesus, but he's not on his feet. And Jesus took his hands and pulled him up, and they walked to the boat together. See, being a Christian is not the absence of fear, but the presence of Jesus. You should. She said she's going to write it down. I need it quoted, shared all over Facebook. Let's make it go viral. I don't care about any of that. But it's the presence of Jesus that casts out fear. But when they got to the boat, did Jesus say to Peter, Peter, you're out. Dude, you can't be afraid and be a disciple. You're done. Until you get so pity party, feel sorry for yourself, and ask me 400 times to forgive you and all that, you're done. No, he didn't say that at all. As a matter of fact, he just moved on. It wasn't a thing. See, we focus too much. This isn't even my sermon, so this is the pre-sermon to the sermon. We focus too much on our negative actions, the things that we do that are sinful, and they create shame in us. And so then we never feel that we're good enough. Peter screwed up more than just about anyone else in the Bible, except for Paul, who wrote most of it, by the way. He wrote almost every book in the New Testament. And before he had his encounter on the road to Damascus, his job was to persecute and kill the people who follow Jesus. If there was a man probably full of shame, it would be that man. But God never said, nope, you're out. As a matter of fact, God said, I choose you. You're the one that I'm going to choose for this. Because what I see in, yes, you've killed people, but what I see in you is when you believe something, you believe it so deeply that you will do anything to further that message. And all we have to do is shift what you think. And so the presence of God, the presence of Jesus is what will shift that. All right, let's get back to the sermon. Both hope and hopelessness are contagious. If you don't believe me, try it. Get down in the dumps and talk about how terrible it is, and then surround yourself with some people and see how long it takes them to jump on board. Then try it the other way. Make a conscious decision to find the positive, to say, okay, things are going to get better. It's going to be okay. It's going to be good. And see how quickly your 2 or 3 around you will jump on board and be hopeful with you. Because see, hope and hopelessness are contagious. And this verse 2 where it says, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. That's saying I have hope. And when you begin to declare hope to people, it doesn't have to be word for word Bible, by the way. But when you declare those truths that, hey, he will protect us, he will keep us, he's going to take care of us, that bolsters hope because it's contagious. Isaiah 35, verse 3 through 6, you guys can read it later for the sake of time, but it talks a lot about its declaration of hope. But today I want to pick up on verse 3, and we're going to get through as many verses as we can before I feel like it's time to stop or people start leaving. So, we're going to read verse 3. For he will deliver you from the snail. If you get caught by a snail, you deserved it. Just saying. He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. Snare of the fowler, what is that? I've read that 100 times and I've never pieced together what that was. It's a snare, so a trap, by a fowler, a bird hunter. That's what they're talking about. So to catch a bird, I don't know how many of you have caught a bird that flies, not a chicken, but like a bird that flies. But I'm assuming it's not very easy to trap a bird. You can shoot a bird, but has anyone ever trapped a bird? No? Yeah. Okay, well good. Because I thought, good, another thing that everyone else has never done, or everyone else has done and I've never done it. I don't know how it works. I can't imagine trapping a bird. But I'm imagining that they had to be pretty sneaky in order to catch a bird. So it says that he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler. Which brings me to my title today. You might get caught. You might get caught. So, first what I want to do is kind of go through what some of the words in that verse mean. Then we're going to do the same with 4 and the same with 5. So when we read through that, as I said, fowler's snare would be the trap of a bird hunter. And from the deadly pestilence, that word deadly can be translated as destruction, as greed, and as desire. I really like the desire because if you put that in there, it would be, for he will deliver you of the snare of the fowler and from the desire of pestilence.
Psalm 91, verse 3.
But we're not talking about pestilence like killer hornets, isn't that what they're called? Or Asian moths, I think is the latest thing. We're not talking those pestilence. This is all spiritual talk. It's figurative talk. Okay? So, but pestilence, when it talks about pestilence, it is saying the same word that was used all through Exodus in every curse. When God would send the flies and he would do all the things that he did throughout Exodus to the Egyptians, it's the same word. And then in verse 4 it says, he will cover you. Another way to word that, another way to translate that is to overshadow you. So he will overshadow you with under his wings. Or he will cover you with his pinions. So he will shadow you with, that word pinions is feathers. It's the flight feathers. It's the outer feathers of a bird. But interestingly enough, it's not implying, you guys, that God has wings. He's referring to the mercy seat and the cherubim that sits over the mercy seat, which you can read earlier. The mercy seat is where God is seated. It's where we go to petition for forgiveness, where we ask God to forgive us. He's seated on the mercy seat. And this is saying that he will protect you and you're free to come to the mercy seat and get forgiveness. His faithfulness also can be translated as his firmness or his truth, will be your shield and your buckler. A buckler was the small, if you watch sword fighting movies, which I do, like King Arthur kind of stuff, the buckler was the shield that sat on your forearm, the small round one for hand-to-hand combat. Okay, so you've got your big shield, your shield of faith, but also the buckler, okay, for hand-to-hand combat. So, let's see, where was it? His faithfulness. And then in verse 5, you will not fear. This, I don't even know why I'm going to say this, but I am because I think it's interesting. The word fear there is Yahweh. And what I got from that, Yahweh, remember, because God's name is Yahweh. What I got from that is that there are times where fear can masquerade itself so close to the kingdom, because the devil perverts what God creates, that fear can sneak in so closely. Yahweh and Yahweh are awfully close in pronunciation. That's what I got. It may not mean that, but that's what I got. So if you're offended by that, sorry about that. The terror by night, terror can be dread, nor the arrows that fly by day. What's it saying? You might get caught by the enemy. So we're going to just camp there for just a second. If you didn't get the protection that you thought you were going to get, or that God promised you, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say, right? All this stuff in the beginning of the chapter is saying that He's going to protect me. He's going to protect me. I'm good. Nothing's ever going to hurt me. And then even He'll deliver me from the fowler's snare. So even if I don't get the protection that I thought I would get, and I get caught up in something, we have a promise that He'll deliver us from that. Right? So we can take away that shame factor of walking a Christian life. The shame factor that a lot of us have lived under, that God's going to deliver me, oh, He doesn't deliver me, and I fall into some sinful nature or some sinful activity, and I'm like, well, I've failed, I've screwed up. No, it still says, but He'll deliver you from the fowler's snare. Almost said snail again. And that's important to remember. He's actually expecting you to get caught sometimes. I've said for the last 4 years, God's not looking for perfection. He's looking for effort. God's not looking for you to be the perfect Christian. He's looking for you to be the perfect you walking a Christian life, which is making the best effort you can every day. And if today was a failure, tomorrow's new. Under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. And then this next verse, you will not fear the terror by night, nor the arrows that fly by day. This is important because I want you to think about your life. When does most of your attacks come? When does most of your thoughts, your feelings, your temptations, those happen during the day, right? But then at night, when you lay in bed and you experience terror, dread, oh, I hope something bad doesn't happen. I hope that they make it through the night. I hope that, right? But we use hope, but then we speak death. It's really funny the way we do that. God specifically tells you how the enemy attacks us. He shoots arrows at you all day, and then at night, it's going to eat you alive. It's that foreboding, right? Expecting something bad to happen. We can all shake our head, no, we don't do that, and I can say you're a liar to every one of you because I know all of us do from time to time. All of us will lay down in bed and think, oh no. Why? Because those are the moments that the enemy knows this is where I move in with that terror. And listen, God's smart. He wrote it here because He knows that we're going to go through it. Let's look at it again. You will not fear the terror by night. You will not fear those thoughts that come at you at night, nor the arrows that fly by day. Those arrows are the feelings, the thoughts, the temptations, the things that fly at you all day, right? Those those moments of anger, those moments of jealousy, those moments of greed, those thoughts that flash into your head, whatever it is that you struggle with, in your thought life, that generally happens during the day. And then at night, we call it anxiety, or we call it a panic attack. It's that foreboding. Something's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. I hope something bad doesn't happen. I bet you, if I would have just said that the other way, then I hope that they're going to forgive me. I shared a quote this week on Facebook that says, worrying is just worshiping the problem. It wasn't my quote. I wish it was. It was really good. But it wasn't mine. I can, but it's plagiarism. But worrying is just worshiping the problem. When we focus so much on the problem, I hope that whatever happens, right? I'm right in the process of buying a house. Right in the process. Last Thursday was the appraisal. That's the last step, you guys. The house has to appraise for the number we agreed upon, or it's a no-go. And as soon as that appraisal was done, I was on the phone with Charity. Do you think it'll appraise? I hope it does. I mean, we're going to trust God. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. But if it does, but man, I hope it does. What if it doesn't? What are we going to do if it doesn't? What am I doing? It's that foreboding. It's not going to appraise. I bet you it doesn't. I said that probably a dozen times. So I want to prepare myself for worst case scenario. Right? I don't want to be disappointed next week when I get the appraisal in an email. So it's probably not going to. I mean, really, we should probably just start looking for the next house because it's not going to go. And then I lay in bed and I'm on my iPad. I'm looking at Zillow. Zillow's the online realtor, looking at new houses that might appraise at the right number. Then last night I dreamed about the house and how it appraised $7,000 under, and we couldn't come to an agreement, and we couldn't get the house. And what happened? And here's what I believe. Yes, I was worried about that, and so I'm worshiping the problem. But I also believe that God allowed me to do it so I could use it as an analogy today of what worrying. Yeah, see, so this is just a spiritual thing that God helped me with. But I believe that it's a great analogy of worshiping the problem, of that foreboding spirit that can just creep its way in, the terror that comes at night.
So good.
Somebody's sick in your family. When do you worry the most? At night. When COVID-19, when all that started, during the day I was nervous. There was a couple times that I got downright fearful, but at night is when I would dwell. Because everything was quiet. I have 5 kids. There's not a moment of quiet in my life, except for at bedtime. So I'm laying in bed, and all of a sudden, everything went quiet. And I fixed my mind on the problem. So I could really concentrate on it and really get depressed. Because worrying is just worshiping the problem.
Love your transparency.
Some people do. This is really. Woo! That is an expensive drop, but it didn't break, so that's good news. We're going to just leave it there where I was told to leave it from the beginning. Let's get focused. This is the opposite of the kingdom mindset, though, isn't it? The kingdom mindset is blessings, isn't it? Not blessing, I'm not talking about money. Okay, it's not about money. Money's a thing. But I heard a song, some of you may know I'm a big fan of Toby Mac. Toby Mac is, just look him up, you'll love him. But he got bored over this quarantine season, And he started digging through old hard drives. And he released 7 songs. They're called the demos. They're just songs that didn't make it on an album. And he has a song on there that says, I want to be rich. And I listened to it like 5 times and didn't get the point. I thought he was talking about wanting to be rich financially, because that's kind of what it sounded like at first. And then it started talking about rich in love, rich in family, rich in friends. See, blessings don't come from money. Money generally brings problems. From what I've heard, I don't have any, but I heard that money brings problems. And so our blessings come in other ways, right? Our blessings come from friends, from family, from maybe it's something that you've always wanted that somebody gives you. And or it could be any number of things. God could just bless you by watching somebody else get blessed. Like, I love to watch other people get blessed. I love it. Like, I like to get blessed too, but I love to watch other people get blessed. And that's what the kingdom mindset is. But this terror that flies by night that we talk about is literally the opposite of a kingdom mindset. A kingdom mindset says, I will be delivered. God has made a way. If God be for me, who can be against me? No weapon formed against me will prosper. All those who rise up against me will fall. The word is fall. No one? Do you know that scripture? I just read it last night. And I've heard it before, but last night it just hit me really hard. All those who rise up against you will fall. There's a song, the next line in the song says, all those who rise up against me will fall. I will not fear what the devil may bring me, because I'm a servant of God. That's kingdom mindset. Then we go to this foreboding mindset that the Bible says that we're going to have, but we don't have to fear. And that's something bad's going to happen. Right? They're probably going to take advantage of it. This bad thing's going to happen. That I could say 1,000 things, but you understand the point. That the kingdom mindset is one that we have to shift our focus. So when we're over here, we'll tie in a few other scriptures here. When we're over here in this foreboding, just something bad's going to happen, what should we do? First thing, fix our eyes on Jesus. Second thing, take every thought captive. Third thing, whatsoever is pure, Philippians 4:8, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is holy, whatsoever is good, of good report. If there's anything worthy of praise, fix your mind on those things. And the reason I'm saying that is because you remind yourself, you're in this foreboding place. First, I need to refocus. It does not mean that I'm not sinking still. We're back to Peter. Just because I'm shifting my focus does not change what's happening around me. I'm just shifting my focus. Then I take the thought captive. Then after I take the thought captive, I apply Philippians 4:8 to my life and find something in that situation that is worthy of praise, that's good, that's pure, that's holy, and I fix my mind there. That's how we shift. But it actually gives us one of the best remedies in verse 2. I'm in a foreboding moment. I shift my focus, right? Keep in mind, I could be focused on Luke, and I need to focus over here. I may still be very interested in whatever Luke is doing back there, but I can force myself to look over here. So when I shift my focus on Jesus, it is not some mystical or magical thing that happens where I'm just like, okay, it's all about you. No, I'm forcing myself. Get into the Word. Listen to some worship. I still am glancing at Luke, but I'm trying to keep my focus here. I take the thought captive. Then I go to Philippians 4:8. But what do? I testify. I say, He is my God. He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Verse 2 of Psalms 91. He actually gives us the recipe for rest. We take the shield of faith, what does it say about the shield of faith in Ephesians? What's its purpose? to ward off the fiery darts, the fiery arrows of the enemy. We've already established, I got about 2 minutes left. We've already established that those arrows are the feelings, thoughts, temptations that happen in our life. So we use the shield of faith. And what does the shield of faith really say? He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. If God be for me, who can be against me? No weapon formed against me shall prosper. What are we doing? The shield of faith is not some mystical thing either. It's just saying, I believe you will take care of this. I believe you will take care of this. I believe you will take care of this every time one of those arrows is shot at us. So that if we use the shield of faith correctly, when we go to bed at night, we find rest. Because our eyes are fixed on him. We begin to declare the goodness of God. And when we declare the goodness, when we declare he's my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust, when we declare Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for good and not evil. Right? There's all these scriptures that we can declare over our lives, and when we do, Ned, we find rest.
Amen.
Last story, he's not here, so I can talk about Rob. It's a good one this time. It's a good story. Made me cry, but not in his presence. I waited till he left my office before I cried because I didn't want him to know that it was good. I had to wait. I told him to shut up and get out. And then I cried for a minute, and then the next day I said, hey, glad you did that. Because I wanted him to just think I was mad for a minute. But I was freaking out about the house in my office and stuff that was going on, and nothing about anything other than just buying a house. I've never bought a house. I didn't know there were so many steps to it. There's a lot of steps. It's a lot of work. And so I'm freaking out to Rob about it, and he goes, Michael, I think you were in there. Michael, shut up. Be still and know that I am God. And it changed the atmosphere in the room. It changed everything in the room. So I said, shut up and get out. But as I thought more and more about it, what did he do? Really? Michael, he is your refuge and your fortress, your God in whom you trust. That's what he said to me in that moment. See, we will find rest when we know that he will defend us. The word says that he goes before us to fight our battles. We sung about that a minute ago. We praise, we worship, we adore him, we do those things, and then he goes and he fights our battles for us. Doesn't mean that we won't have struggle, but it means that we have faith that God will take care of it. It doesn't mean that we do nothing, right? I don't like that thought process of, well, I will do nothing and the Lord will just take care of it. And I sit for 30 years and do nothing. No. It says the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord. That means he's expecting us to move. In order to take steps, we have to be either moving forward, backwards, or sideways. We've got to be doing something, right? Or there's no steps. I just did a little waltz. But God is telling us that if we want to find rest, what do? In all of this, really, declare his goodness. We say how good he is in the midst of a bad situation. Not denying, remember I talked about this a second ago, or 20 minutes ago. Not denying the reality around us, but knowing that there is a promise that he will deliver us. And that's where we choose to focus. It doesn't mean that I'm not still looking over here and glancing, but my focus is here. Right? I still know that there's a situation happening around me. Peter still knew that he was in the water. But he chose to shift his focus when Jesus said, nope, up here, look at me. Look at me, don't look at the water. I know it's scary, just take my hands, we're going to go back together. I know it's Mother's Day, but for us fathers, if you've ever taken your kid into a pool, you've said, no, look at me, don't panic. You're gonna float, you're fine. You have arm thingies on, right? What a wonderful picture of what Jesus was doing there. No, look at me.
Yes,
Right? Every time Charity has to pull a splinter out of one of the kids' hands. No, look at me. Don't look at that. Look at me. It's going to be fine. You're not even going to see it's out. Right? That's what Jesus was doing. He was showing us a picture of the Father,
thank you, Lord.
of the parentalness of God. Of no, don't look at what's happening. Look at me. I'll help you get back.
It's good. So good.
We fix our eyes on Him. And He promises us rest. Next week we're going to talk about the next few verses. I was looking to see if I knew where we were going to stop next week, but I don't know. But this week, it's so key to understand verse 1 and 2, there are 4 names for God there. And they literally address all of our needs. That we will find rest when we declare His goodness. That we don't have to worry about going to bed. Maybe no one in this room has to worry about that, but maybe somebody online. Listen, there are people who can't go to sleep because of the fear and foreboding they experience when they lay their head on their pillow, and they need to hear how to fix that. That if we remember to use our faith to ward off those darts, you're a moron. No, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You can't pay your bills. My God shall supply all my needs. Right? Whatever those issues, whatever those situations are, find a promise. If you can't find one, reach out to me. I'll find you one. I will find you a promise in the Bible that addresses your situation. That's a promise for me. I will find you a promise. And what will happen is, when you use your shield of faith during the day, when you lay your head down, you'll find rest. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you. God, I thank you that you are the God who was and is to come. That you are the same yesterday, today, and forever. That your mercies are new every morning. That you never change. Father, that what applied to the writer of Psalm 91 applies to us today. That as we enter into different aspects of our life, God, that you are able to deliver us. And Father, I thank you today that you are not just some far off God, but you are a Father. You are a friend that says, no, look at me. Look at me. Don't look around, look at me. And we'll walk through this together. And I know that we're a small group in here, and this may not apply to anyone here. Keep your eyes closed and your head bowed, but we are online as well. If there's anybody who says, you know what, I want that God in my life. I want that person that you're describing, that Yahweh, that friend relationship, but also that Elyon, or that Elohim that created all things and is elevated above all things. And I need that in my life because I feel like I'm spinning out of control here or even online as a prophetic act. Would you slip your hand up real quick and say, I want that God in my life today? I'll give you just a couple of seconds. Listen, and if you're online, and even if you're here and you're wondering, you can put your hands down. If you're wondering, why am I asking you to put your hands up? You're not signifying to anyone but God that, hey, pick me. Choose me today. Everyone's eyes are closed in this room, with the exception of mine. But my hope is that if you want God in your life online, wherever you are when you're watching this, that if you want to accept that Jesus in your life, that you would pray this prayer with me. So I want everyone in this room, whether you lifted your hand or not, to pray the prayer. The reason that I do it that way is for the people who did raise their hand, so they're not embarrassed that they're the only ones praying. But I'd like for you to pray this prayer with me. Heavenly Father, come into my life. Forgive me of my sins. I want relationship with you. I want the relationship Peter had with you. That even when I screw up, you still call me friend. Forgive me. Lead me to be more like you every day. Come into my life. Be my Lord, my Savior, and my very best friend. In Jesus' name. Amen.